It is playoff time. The wild card round coming up this weekend with 3 games on Saturday and 3 games on Sunday. So we are here to break it down, talk some betting, talk some DFS, and get you set for what should be a wild weekend. Welcome on into FanDuel Live Q&A, where today we are breaking down the NFL playoffs and taking your questions live on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Periscope channels. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, joined here as always by JJ Zacharyson and Brandon Gadula, our usual snake draft crew, here to talk about the NFL playoffs as well. We'll be here every Friday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. JJ, happy playoffs to you. How you doing today?
I'm good. I'm still very, very confused as to why Cole Beasley is second team All-Pro. But aside from that, things are going well, good enough.
I read the explanation for it. It kind of made sense when I read it. Like it was the person thought
need a slot receiver or something like that.
Yeah. So like I can get it. And as someone who has benefited financially from Cole Beasley this year, I can appreciate Cole Beasley. Probably would not have made the same choice personally, but you know that there is that. So JJ, I'm assuming you were third team then?
But yeah, yes.
Okay, well, congratulations to you. Brandon Gadula is the managing editor for numberFire.com. Brandon, happy playoffs to you. How is your Friday?
It's good. I think we've got some good games this week, some good bets. I feel pretty solid about these games. We talked in detail about all of them on Thursday. Just gotta wait and see what the injury situations actually end up being, but I think it's gonna be a good 6-game slate of NFL games this week.
And we got some good injury news post-recording on Thursday because Mike Evans seems like he'll be good to go. Stephon Diggs should be good. Second-team All-Pro Cole Beasley may be good to go as well for the Buffalo Bills. So some positive injury news there. This has usually been our snake draft show, and we wanted to get some competitiveness in there still. So we decided to, as opposed to a snake draft, we're going to do bets. We each have 5 units to allocate across 3 bets for the weekend. And we're going to go through those bets. We're going to go through game by game, allocate our bets, let you know what we're thinking about these games, and then answer your questions. So if you have questions about Wildcard Weekend DFS, any bets you're thinking about, any props you're thinking about, put those questions in the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, or Periscope. Put those there. We'll get to those questions after we do our bets for today. Let you know our thoughts on this slate of games. Let's start things off here with the Colts at the Bills. Total here is 51.5. The spread is the Bills -6.5. And Brandon, you want to start things off here. One of your bets is for this game. What are you seeing with value between the Colts and the Bills?
I have the over at 51.5. It mostly has to do with the Buffalo offense here. We saw them go off against the Dolphins in a game that really didn't matter that much to Buffalo, but it was everything to the Dolphins. But the real reason I'm on this is just how good Josh Allen has been against tough opponents this year. The Colts rank 8th against the pass, according to numberFire's schedule-adjusted metrics. But Josh Allen against top 12 opponents in 7 games, mind you, nearly half his schedule against top 12 adjusted pass defenses. He's averaged 297 yards per game, 2.7 touchdowns, 0.42 passing net expected points per dropback, which is 0.38 over expected. So if he played at the level the defense is allowed, he'd have been at 0.04, was at 0.42. Very good. League average for context is just 0.13. So even in these really tough spots, he's been very good. He's been the best quarterback against top 12 pass defenses this season. And on the other side of this game, Phillip Rivers has his flaws, but he's actually 8th among quarterbacks with at least 8 games in passing net expected points per dropback over expectation. Buffalo's 14th against the pass, but 23rd against the rush. So I think there are reasons to like both offenses here and not necessarily to like the defenses. So I do like the over in this game, even though it is at 51.5.
Okay, so you have 5 units. How many are you putting on the over for this game?
I didn't think this through. I'll actually go 3 because my next 2 are parlays.
Okay, so I'm going to put 3. So you're putting 3 on this one, over 51.5. I think the rationale there makes a lot of sense. Josh Allen, like you said, good against tough defenses. Also, didn't have John Brown for all those, but John Brown now back. Cole Beasley might be there.
Second team All-Pro. Cole Beasley
second team All-Pro. Cole Beasley may be around too. So I like that one. I also have a bet in this game. This will be for 1 unit. I'm going to go with the first touchdown scorer. Jonathan Taylor, he is 8-1 right now, and I kind of dig betting underdogs to be the first touchdown scorer because sometimes you can get things over accounted for there. Jonathan Taylor, 8-1. if you look at him ever since he became the lead back for the Colts, this is a 6-game sample for him. He is up to 35% of the team's red zone touches in that time, and that number's actually been higher over their past 3 games. So I think that the red zone role is expanding. I think that there is a possibility that Jonathan Taylor winds up having a larger role in this offense with everything on the line. And you're giving me an 8-1 to be the first touchdown scorer. I think that is enough. Taylor, in that time, has basically been Derrick Henry, 139.5 yards in scrimmage per game in that time. Derrick Henry, 134 for the full season. So I think there's some value there in Jonathan Taylor to be the first touchdown scorer at 8-1. JJ, you are basically Jonathan Taylor's agent, I guess is I would say here. Any thoughts on Jonathan Taylor 8-1 to be the first touchdown scorer?
Yeah, I love that bet. Whenever we were talking about it earlier, you brought it up, and I thought it made a ton of sense. Not only that, but Buffalo is a little bit more susceptible, on the ground, and their secondary is a little bit tougher to beat. I would expect Indianapolis to come with a ground and pound approach against them. Whether they can really maintain that is up in the air. I don't know if they will be able to. But him getting the first touchdown makes a ton of sense to me.
Another thing, too, is it's helpful that, like, the one concern you could have about Jonathan Taylor is if they fall behind, it might be more of an Nyheim Hines script, but for first touchdown score, that's less of a concern. So I am on board there. Okay, Rams and Seahawks. A lot of good injury news for the Rams. Heading into this game, total is 42.5. The Seahawks 3-point favorites. Jared Goff, I'm guessing, is going to be good to go. He texted, I think it was Mike Silver, a thumbs up emoji earlier this week, which is funny given that he broke his thumb. But he should be good to go. Cooper Kupp is off the COVID list. Andrew Whitworth is off IR. So I actually have a couple of bets in this game. I'm going to put 3 units on the over for this game, 42.5. And my instinct is to not go over on a third-time matchup between 2 divisional teams, but I think with this number being as low as it is, with 2, I'll say competent quarterbacks, I guess I don't know if we can say that about Goff given the injury, but 2 competent quarterbacks, a total of 42.5 in 2021 seems a little bit low. So I think that the Rams offense, getting Whitworth back is a big thing for them. I think they'll move the ball. So I like the over here at 42.5. I don't like it enough to bet the Rams plus 3 anymore. It was 3.5 before. I thought that was fine, but 3 is a different scenario because you are losing the field goal there. So I'm good with the Rams, the over here. I also like the first touchdown scorer to be Cam Akers. He is plus 750. If you look at the games where Cam Akers has been the Rams lead back, it's a 4-game sample. He has 51% of the team's red zone carries or touches in that time. That's a massive number. And he is now an additional week removed from his ankle injury. He was able to play a decent number of snaps in week 17, despite that high ankle sprain having been just 2 weeks before that. So extra week of rest. I think the Rams offense should move the football here. I think plus 750 is more than enough. Seeing Chris Carson at plus 650 is mildly startling. But I think that there's a lot of value in Akers there at plus 750. Brandon, we've got additional injury news since we talked about this game yesterday. Are you feeling any better about this game now, or are you still very down on this one relative to the other games on Saturday?
I still don't. I would rank it 3rd out of the 3 games if I'm looking at it from like a daily fantasy standpoint. I still have pace concerns here. Jared Goff has not been throwing the ball downfield for a while now. I don't think that will get any better. These 2 teams, again, you mentioned is their 3rd matchup, obviously, is division rivals. Not a whole lot of points in those games. Kind of weird market shares, weird stuff. I'm a little bit nervous about that game, but my betting model does have it hitting the over for what it's worth, but I still don't really have a whole lot of interest in that myself.
Never doubt the numbers, Brandon. How dare you? So I'm actually done now. I've got all my bets in. I had 3 units on the over here. I had 1 unit on Cam Akers for a touchdown score and 1 on Jonathan Taylor for a touchdown score. So I'll know how we're feeling pretty early on Saturday. After Cam Akers plunges in 15 seconds into the game, I'll be feeling pretty good about this one. Let's move now to the Saturday night game because we actually have a lot of action here. I think both of you have stuff here. I'll start things off with JJ as I pull up the Buccaneers and Washington, 44.5 the total. Buccaneers, 7.5-point favorites. What are you feeling from a betting perspective in this one, JJ?
Yeah, so you got to make the most boring game of the weekend probably. A little bit entertaining with with the bets. So the first bet that I have is Leonard Fournette's total yards prop is 41.5, and I'm going with the under. I'm putting 2 units on the under. He's hit this 5 times this season. And 3 of those instances came during the first half of the season when that backfield was very much more up in the air than it is now. The other 2 instances were when Ronald Jones was out. So over the second half of the season, the only time Fournette's really gotten close to this is when Ronald Jones hasn't been active. Ronald Jones, it's the playoffs. I would assume they're going to run and roll with their, objectively best back in that backfield. I'm not talking about Keyshawn Vaughn here. Obviously, I'm talking about Ronald Jones. So they're going to roll out with Ronald Jones a good bit, I would assume. And then not only that, but like the matchup's not great in general. I mean, it's a great defensive line that they're facing in Washington. So I think all that combined, it makes this Fournette bet, I think, a fairly logical and easy one for me.
And I think that what we've seen in the past, we talked about this in the heat check yesterday, but last year in the playoffs, we saw Derrick Henry, Aaron Jones, and Damian Williams play much larger snap rates than they did during the regular season. So basically, I think you want to look for situations where you can see which players may get expanded roles with everything on the line. Week 14 showed us that the Buccaneers think that Ronald Jones is their top guy when he's fully healthy. So I think that means to me that Ronald Jones is a candidate to have a larger snap rate in the playoffs and during the regular season, which would have a negative effect on Leonard Fournette. So I think that one makes a lot of sense. What other one did you like from this game here, JJ?
Yeah, so I'm going to do a same game parlay here. I have Chris Godwin over 70.5 receiving yards. Then I'm putting that with J.D. McKissic over 32.5 receiving yards for plus 244. And I'm going to put 1 unit on this. I'm not overly confident per se. But Godwin, as we know, he plays the majority of his snaps from the slot. He's played over 2/3 of his snaps from the slot this year. Washington's been good at limiting overall production from that area of the field, but they are top 10 in the league in percentage of targets that go to the slot. So I think that's a little bit intriguing. Mike Evans banged up, obviously. I think he will play, it sounds like, but at the same time, we don't know, how involved he's going to be. So Godwin's going to probably, I would assume, end up being the de facto top target in this game. So given the matchup, the individual matchup he has, and given the Mike Evans injury, I do like Godwin in this matchup. And then, I like the correlation with what that would mean then for J.D. McKissic in that backfield. So obviously, he's been involved as a receiver in the backfield since Alex Smith took over, and I know that Alex Smith hasn't played every snap, and he might not even play this weekend. We'll see. But regardless, since Alex Smith took over, J.D. McKissic has averaged almost a 20% target share per game in that offense. And the thing that I like about McKissic too in this game is that Tampa Bay generates a lot of pressure. They were second in the NFL this year in pressure rate behind only Pittsburgh. And if you generate that pressure on Washington, not only do you have a quarterback, if it is Alex Smith, that dumps the ball off a lot, but now he's probably going to do it a little bit more because of that pressure in his face and that pressure coming. So I like, a potential negative game script, hopefully because of Chris Godwin doing well. I like the negative game script, and then J.D. McKissic benefiting from that negative game script.
Okay, so plus 251 on that one if you parlay Chris Godwin and J.D. McKissic for their overs and receiving yards. And the McKissic angle also makes sense because Washington has shown us that they think that McKissic is the better passing game back than Antonio Gibson. Whether or not that's accurate is questionable, but they think that, and they've shown us that they think that. And also Tampa Bay is so good against the run that you're kind of more inclined to use your backs out of the backfield as receivers rather than runners. So I think that one is logical there. How about you, Brandon? What are you seeing in this game? Because I think you have a bet here as well.
Yeah, I also have a same game parlay, but I'm on the unders. I always like unders. It's just
such a Scrooge.
Yeah,
man, I like to have fun.
Yeah,
I like to root for guys, not against them.
Brandon likes to win money. We like to have fun.
Yeah,
I'm always on unders. I've been doing the NBA betting guide on numberFire, and I think 90% of my bets have been unders. But I have a same game parlay. Tampa Bay's money line.
Okay.
Tom Brady under 284.5 passing yards.
Okay.
And then Terry McLaurin under 67.5 receiving yards. I had it at plus 351 for those. Here's my reasoning. Number one, the Bucs are about
341 now. So you're they're moving against you, bud.
Losing some money there.
The Bucks are about 69% likely to win, according to my simulations, which
Nice.
is obviously a very nice start to this three-leg parlay. It's about 79% if I assume Taylor Heineke plays and his efficiency sticks. Second, Tom Brady's averaged negative 0.09 passing net expected points in 5 games against top 12 adjusted pass defenses. Washington is fourth. He's averaging 243 yards in those games. It's also a night game, and Tom Brady's been kind of tired at night.
Sleepy Tom. Sleepy Tom narrative. Yeah.
Usually not something I dig into, but he goes to bed early, and he's been quite bad in his 4 primetime games this year. Negative 0.10 passing net expected points per dropback, way off the expected pace based on if you adjust that for the opponents he's played. 239 passing yards per game in that sample. So he's not quite himself against tough opponents this year. He's not himself at night, and he gets both of those. So I like the under there, despite the fact that I like the Bucks to win this one. And then third, Terry McLaurin, been limited in practice. He's not 100%. We basically know that. Since hitting the injury report in week 12 with an ankle injury, he's averaged 49.4 yards per game with a 21.5% target share. His ADOTS, average depth of target, is 8.9 yards. Receiver average is about 10.6 this season. He does have 2 games with at least 77 yards in that sample, but the 3 others were 40 or fewer, despite at least 6 targets in all 5 of those games. Plenty of quarterback concerns. Not the easiest matchup necessarily. That's the one I worry about a little bit, just because they could be chasing and throwing a lot. But he doesn't seem healthy, and we haven't really seen them producing a lot, through McLaurin in recent weeks.
It's pretty wild that a 21% target share has led to 49.4 yards per game, but that is life in the Washington offense. Okay, so Brandon is at plus 341 for that same game parlay over on FanDuel Sportsbook. Let's move now to the Sunday games, and we don't have anything for the first 2 games here, but I do still want to talk about them. First, we have the Ravens against the Titans, total 54.5. Baltimore, a 3-point favorite. I am mildly surprised that things have not shifted towards Tennessee more than they have. I guess people riding high on the Ravens, which makes sense. I mean, they played really well down the stretch. The Tennessee defense is pure trash. I kind of thought when these lines first came out, though, that we'd see more movement towards Tennessee. But you can see right here, it's still plus 102 on Tennessee at plus 3. So clearly there's not been a lot of optimism here. JJ, what are your thoughts on this game here, Baltimore and Tennessee?
Yeah, I mean, I thought one of my props that I almost went with was Lamar Jackson over on the, I think it's 208 yards passing. I could see a scenario where this ends up being, obviously it's projected to be the highest scoring game this weekend. But it's easy to see a scenario where there is somewhat of a negative script, or at least a neutral to negative one for Baltimore, and that's going to force them to throw the ball a little bit more. They were in some pretty advantageous scripts down the stretch too. Somewhat because of schedule, but just in general. And I don't know if that happens in this game, especially what happened last year in the playoffs, right? Where we saw Tennessee do what they did against Baltimore. They were able to actually defend Lamar Jackson, which no other team was able to do really last season. And as a result, he was forced to drop back and pass, and he threw a lot in that game. So I could see that happening for sure. But I think that this is one of those games where, you want to definitely stack. You want to look at these secondary players for DFS purposes. I love Corey Davis in this game. I think that he's a really intriguing option, especially now that AJ Brown's banged up. I think that there's a lot of intrigue that this could be pretty high scoring. Yeah, the Corey Davis receiving yardage prop right now is 59.5. I find that pretty intriguing. Brandon, we talked about this game yesterday as being very into it across the board, and I've gotten no reason to think differently. However, A.J. Brown, as JJ said, is banged up. Limited in practice Wednesday, did not practice Thursday, Friday. Does that alter your view of this game at all? Any concerns around this game if A.J. Brown's not at full health, or are we still a full go here?
It would a little bit for sure. The offensive efficiency would dip, but thankfully they still have Corey Davis, who is not on A.J. Brown's level, but they've actually used just as much, if not more, especially downfield than A.J. Brown, which is very surprising to me. But I still think that even if A.J. Brown is not 100%, which we have reason to believe he wouldn't be if this is the status we have at this point, I still think this is the best game of the weekend. If you're playing the 6-game slate for daily fantasy, I feel really good about it. Specifically Corey Davis, like JJ said, but obviously Derrick Henry as well.
Yeah, I think a Corey Davis with Lamar stack is a great place to start. If you're doing the 6-game slate, I think that's probably where I'll wind up. I've been doing that. It's been tough to get back up into the 6,000 range because I've been overindulgent at running back, as Brandon, I'm sure, is shocked to hear. But trying to find ways to get there. Let's move now to the Bears at the Saints. Total here, 47.5. The Saints, 9.5-point favorites, and justifiably so, because Mitchell Trubisky has had 315 dropbacks this year, and none of them have come against a top 12 pass defense. The Saints are ranked third. I think the Bears are going to get wiped. So you can find some alternate spreads here on this game. And you can look at the Saints minus 35.5 if you want. It's 15-1. Odds on that might not be great, but that's kind of where my head's at with regards to this game. JJ, I've not talked to you about this game yet. So how are you seeing things here? Alvin Kamara likely playing, Michael Thomas likely back on the Saints side of things.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the same boat. This is like the perfect example of, not letting you know that the public in general is likely looking at a Chicago Bears offense and seeing what they did over the last month and a half of the season and not giving their opponents enough credit or lack thereof in the case of the Bears. They faced easily the best schedule down the stretch. And as you noted, Mitch Trubisky hasn't faced anyone really tough. This game on the road and playing in New Orleans, regardless of fans in the stadium, I just think that there's going to be somewhat of an advantage there. It's not a good spot for the Chicago offense. The other thing too is I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball, which I think is helpful when you have sort of a sporadic high variance quarterback. So I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball at all, and it could end up being fairly messy. And now I saw that Darnell Mooney didn't practice today, so there's just another weapon that they've been relying on more and more. My guy Darnell Mooney, and that's not great. I see some
nemesis.
Well, Brandon's favorite wide receiver is Darnell.
I love
Mooney.
me some Darnell Mooney, man.
He's not my favorite.
We may or may not have
he's your least.
We may or may not have made a bet in Week 16 about who would score more FanDuel points between Darnell Mooney and Denzel Mims, and we've had bad bets. I think that's the worst. Denzel Mims had a donut that week.
Yeah, so. But didn't was that the game that Mooney scored with like 20 yards?
Probably that's usually him. He's the king of
basically his stat line anyway.
He's the king of touchdowns, but still not scoring 10 FanDuel points. Like that is the Darnell Mooney story, except for last week when he had like 93 targets for -7 air yards.
I mean, I should say too, if something is going on with Darnell Mooney, we should bump up Anthony Miller a little bit for what that's worth. I mean, it's Anthony Miller. He's incredibly inconsistent, but he's still, I still think the talent's there at least.
I mean, he's done something with his career, which is valuable. He's $4,700. Brandon, would you have interest in Anthony Miller with Darnell Mooney not practicing this entire week, or Javon Wims? Let's talk about him too. I think he's got 6 targets this year on like 197 snaps.
A lot of cardio.
King of cardio. Javon Wims. Any interest for you, Brandon?
More so in Miller than Wims. Miller has run 59% of the routes since Trubisky returned in Week 12. Not a great target share, but it's at least, I mean, it's the same as Jimmy Graham's for what it's worth in that sample at 9%. So I would have to lean Miller. And I'd have interest because there's not a whole lot of value at receiver this week that I feel great with anyway. So the extra savings for Miller would definitely help me.
Yeah, like I said, I was scrambling to get back in the 6,000 range at wide receiver. Anthony Miller crossed my mind. Couldn't quite get there, but I might by the time we get to tomorrow or Sunday, depending which slate I'm playing. Let's finish up here with the Browns and the Steelers. 47.5 total here. The Steelers are 6-point favorites. The Browns, I don't think they practiced again today because of all their COVID issues. What could go wrong? You, JJ, do have a bet in this game. It is a player prop. What are you seeing with value for Browns Steelers?
Yeah, so I am going to put 2 units on Chase Claypool hitting his over 48.5 yards. If you look
2 yards, it's 50.5 now. Oh boy.
Man. You got to lock me in at 48.5 though, right?
I don't know. Does Slack count? Like, does Slack count?
I think so. Look, I was into this.
Slack is the official record. Okay, so JJ locked this number in.
Yeah, I think if this were the opposite and Jim's numbers got worse, he would have said that Slack counted.
Yeah. But
okay,
I
run the show here. I have to make my own rules.
Guys, it doesn't matter. Chase Claypool's going over 50.5 anyway.
He's going over 150.
So weeks 14, 15, and 16, we saw Claypool's snap share rise by about 10-ish% per game on average. And he averaged a 19% target share per game over that time. That was up about 3%. They're using him more and more. They're not using James Washington like Big Ben wanted halfway through the season. But the other thing, too, with Chase Claypool, well, number one, faced Cleveland twice this year. In those games, he had 74 and 101 yards against them. But number two, he's a big play threat, so he could hit the over on one play, realistically. And the other thing, too, with Pittsburgh, when you look at these player props and you look at the way game script might go, because obviously Cleveland very banged up, whether it's because of injury or because of COVID. The other thing, too, is that Pittsburgh is incredibly pass friendly. They had the highest neutral script pass rate this season. So that at least gives you at least some cushion if there is this really high positive game script, that they're at least fairly pass heavy. I don't think that they're going to go nuts per se, but if they do see a great positive game script, you can feel a little bit more confident in the passing attack. So I like Chase Claypool. I think they're going to unleash him in the playoffs a little bit more. Hopefully they do, because it's smart to, because he's very, very good. So I like the over. Look, if you guys want me to say 50.5, I'll say 50.5, but I locked it in at 48.5.
I don't care personally, but I think with Chase Claypool, I'll take him again, 150.5, because Mike Tomlin has said they were cutting into his snaps to avoid the rookie wall. The reason you do that is to conserve guys for the playoffs, and the playoffs are here. So I would expect a fully unleashed Chase Claypool. Baker Mayfield minus 184 to throw a pick. Brandon, you want a piece of that one, or what are you seeing in this game?
I'm gonna go.
I was just sad when I scrolled down and saw that.
I mean, I'm worried now because I'm on an under.
Okay.
And it goes if Claypool gets the 150, it's going to be a little tight for Ben Roethlisberger to go under 283.5 yards. But I'm going to, of course, the two parlays I have, I think, can all be bet is separate, but it's more fun, I think, to throw in a parlay.
Yeah, so we get three bets. You're cheating. Okay.
For this competition. No, for anyone listening, but I have the Steelers money line parlayed with Ben Roethlisberger under 283.5 passing yards for plus 156. That's what I had. I don't know what it is now.
That's right. That's still there.
Okay.
JJ's moving lines. You're not.
Okay.
Sorry.
I thought I moved one last time I talked.
The public has access to our Slack, and you're the JJ wanting Chase Claypool's numbers, whereas yours are like, oh no, fade Brandon.
I could pair this one with the Steelers to cover, but I like the Steelers outright just fine. They're about 62% likely to win, according to my simulations, without a bunch of adjustments for what to expect from Cleveland. Frankly, Cleveland's offense was a little better than their points, their point total indicated last week. So I want to factor that in too. I'm just going to play it safe, go with the Steelers money line. But the Steelers' success hasn't been stemming from Roethlisberger this year. He's just over the NFL average in per drop back efficiency based on numberFire's metrics. His average depth of target is a full yard lower than the NFL average. He also, and this is something the Steelers do a lot over the years, they play down to their opponents. He's done that this year. He actually has 7 games against bottom 10 pass defenses. Cleveland's 29th, but in those games, he's averaging 247 yards per game while performing pretty much at the defensive level of expectations. So not doing a whole lot on top of that. He does have 5 games with more than 268 yards, and in all of those, he got to 300, but 4 of those games finished within 6 points either way. That's where the spread is, but I think you can make the case that this one gets out of hand. I think a lot of people would feel that that's very likely. And so in his 4 double-digit wins, he's averaged 248 yards. One of those factored into this 4-game sample, he had 333 yards against the Bengals, and he's still with that, averaging 248 yards in the other 3, or the 4 total. So, he had 162 yards against Cleveland when they blew him out earlier this year. They do throw a lot, which is a concern. They should be able to throw efficiently, which is another concern, but we just haven't seen him piling up yardage whenever they play from ahead. And I think that could be the case again this week.
The good thing for you is that I will have already wrapped up the competition by the time this game starts. You don't even need to worry about it because all of my stuff wrapped up Saturday. You guys can relax on Sunday just knowing that I've already won, so it's all good. That is all the time that we have for today. We're going to send you off now to Wild Card Weekend to get in those DFS lineups, get in those bets as well over at FanDuel Sportsbook. We'll be back again next Friday, 3:30 p.m. Eastern on FanDuel, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Periscope. Make sure you are subscribed. Brandon will be with you on Tuesday to break down PGA lineups. next weekend's event. So make sure you're subscribed wherever you want to watch and get those questions in for next week. For JJ Zachariason and Brandon Gadula, I am Jim Sana saying so long, and thank you to our video producer, Calvin Theobald, for running the video side of things here today. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll talk to you again next week, and enjoy the playoffs. This has been the FanDuel Live Q&A.